Hello and welcome to Plus Sports on Plus TV Africa. It's another blockbuster episode, and I am your host, Mikhail Timber, welcoming you on the show. We have a few stories that are worth mentioning. Of course, we're going to talk about the situation in Nigeria regarding the NPFL and its attempts to grow the game that later on. But I want to welcome my guest, Monday Thomas, on the show. Monday, good evening.
Thank you so much for having me once again, Michael. It's always a pleasure to talk sports with you, and I can't wait to get on with it.
Well, it's the end of most seasonal football all across the world. Of course, some countries are still playing their bit. Saudi Arabia, though, even in the Middle East, they're starting to wrap up their league campaign. Football is going to, club football specifically, is going to go away for a little while. In the meantime, we'll have one or two games internationally. What do you make of the just it just happened within the last few hours? The English national side announcing their list of players called up to the national side. Evan Tony has missed out because of his ban, and Southgate hasn't said much about it. But ultimately, other players have made it into it. Some of them new time, first time. Some of them even returning players who chose to keep faith with the Three Lions in hopes that they would get called back. Eze from Crystal Palace has been called up, and he's a young talent. He's got a lot of positive talk around his future. But the Three Lions is so notoriously difficult for African players who could have played for other teams, other countries, but who chose to choose the Three Lions, the English national side, as their national team. It's difficult. Some players never make it all the way in. Some players have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. What do you make of the new squad announcement?
All right, first of all, I'd like to just have a bite on the just concluded English Premier League. Because as far as the title is concerned, it is concluded because Manchester City are the newly crowned champions of England once again.
Understood.
And it's a shame. It's a shame for Arsenal. I mean, it's been a bittersweet season when they thought they almost had it. And Manchester City once again came up and showed their dominance in the Spanish La Liga. Barcelona champions in the German Bundesliga, yet to be concluded with one game left to be played. But of course, with the English national team preparing for the next Euro 2026 qualifiers, just like you highlighted, some key players have been called upon. And yes, Eberechi they deserve a place in national football. But once again, I can list the numbers of players who were in their prime at a particular point in time, but they couldn't break into the national team of England. The likes of Tammy Abraham, who was struggling, who could have played for Nigeria. So going back in time to remember the likes of Gabriel Agboloho, who also played for Aston Villa. He was a devastating striker, if I can remember. But if on his way to the English squad only to play qualifiers, not very competitive games, and which is certainly a major concern. Now, Eberechi, who has contributed to 10 plus goals in the English Premier League this season, here he goes again. I don't know even he has the length of the likes of Fikayo Tomori, who would have played for Nigeria, but of course opted to play for the Three Lions of England. Let's just pray and hope. I'm not a prophet of doom. I wouldn't want to see him, of course, not play for England for many times. But let's just see. This is just a recurring decimal, and it is very easy to predict that in no time, in the next 3-4 years, Eberechi might just be a forgotten factor for the English national team.
This seems to be a recurring theme with the English national side. When it comes to countries like Spain, Germany, you can pretty much predict who's going to be in the squad in every single friendly, in every single major tournament. You can accept that these players are going to be there, and others know that perhaps they need to work harder, and maybe if there's an injury here or there, a suspension here or there, they might make it back in. However, it tends to be with the English national side, they rob a lot of countries who have an opportunity to take advantage of a player with dual nationality. Those players get called up at under 21, under 20, under 17, under 19, and then to the senior squad, just so it seems like the national side can lock these players down, but then the guarantee of them being called on a regular basis isn't there. Eberechi Eze might just be one of such players, as you mentioned. Lewis Dunk has also been called up to the England's 25-man squad. He's making his way back into the squad, but this is just one of those players that we might not see come back. It seems like every manager who takes over the Three Lions is chopping and changing, trying to figure out if there's an opportunity to take advantage of a younger player to make some kind of impact, but then it doesn't really matter because it's probably not going to last. I remember Hudson-Odoi a few years ago. He got called up to the national side. If he's going to be able to play for any other team now, he will have to apply for a change of nationality.
Now, I think some people are not familiar with the selection techniques of the English national team, which is, I think for me, it is I would say boyhood selection, boyhood level of thinking. Now, this is how the English national team, and it's quite a shame that even Gareth Southgate, who has been around the game as a footballer, is also following the same techniques. Now, English people, English managers for a national team, they just tend to go with the form. Any player who is consistently in form for the last 5 games in club football gets to play for the national team. So if the Euros 2026 comes around and Eberechi Eze maybe is just returning from injury, is not giving in the actual shift that he's supposed to. Of course, Eberechi Eze is the player that it is very clear that this man is blessed with so much talent, and as he's continued to grow in football, now this is what happens if he gets injured to, let's say, 10 games to the Euro 2026, and maybe he's not putting in the form that the English manager wants him. It's quite a shame that he is not going to be picked. So English managers are always after the form. They're not after consistent quality.
Yeah.
They're just after form players who are, of course, playing well. The likes of Lewis Stone, with no disrespect, he's a prolific defender. He has shown his quality this season, but he might just be a one-season wonder, Lewis Stone. And we all know that England, they all have their statutory backliners, the likes of John Stones, Harry Maguire. I'm not saying Lewis Stone shouldn't be called. I'm not saying Lewis Stone is not English, but he's just been informed. That's why he's been picked. Eberechi Eze banging in goals, creating assists. That's why he's been picked.
Yeah.
So this is what happens in the English squad. That's why our Nigerian players, our Nigerian decents who are supposed to play for the Super Eagles, if called upon, if they agree to, because I know Nigeria is not so attractive for this players who have seen attractive football in England to come around and play for. But for their careers, for them to take their careers seriously, for them to add a little bit of longevity in their career, they need to be wise enough to know that playing for the Three Lions as Africans, as players who have a dual citizenship, it is never a very good decision.
Well, we've seen in the past where managers pick a player regardless of form. The manager decides that this player is the kind of player that I can rely on for whatever reason, maybe leadership quality, maybe their game takes a step up when it comes to the national side. You know that these players are typically going to be picked regardless of form. And it seems like the English national side, even amongst their more Caucasian players, no player is safe The likes of Mason Mount this season, he's been left out because he's not in form, and yet he was one of the golden boys for a long time. Phil Foden can't even get into the national side. Sterling is out. By Phil Foden not getting into the national side, I should clarify, not getting into the first team side. Rashford, for example, throughout the tournaments, throughout the World Cup, most of his appearances came off the bench. The question is, isn't the national side for England over bloated at this point, given that they've spread themselves so thin? And at the end of the day, no matter how much quality each generation seems to spit out, it doesn't seem to manifest itself in trophies. Even when they have a manager who seems to be capable of managing tournament football, as Gareth Southgate is. He's not the greatest manager. He's probably not the best tactician that the England FA could hire, but he seems to get them close and around the trophies that they vie for. Yet, is there a lack of consistency to the way they pick players, and therefore is that the reason why they've never truly been able to reach all the way to the promised land of touching a major trophy in recent years?
Well, I wouldn't say that's the reason why England have not won a World Cup since 1996, or maybe, of course, win the Euros where they last played against Italy in the finals. But football, there are lots of factors regarding to how you play, to how you win trophies. You can have a bad selection and have a right team approach. You can have a bad selection and probably get the best factors that can win you games, because in as much players may lack quality in scoring, it is very easy for players to have quality in defending. So if you can defend a goal you score, if you can stop a goal from going in and you get into 90 minutes and maybe extra time, and when it comes to penalties, anyone can win it. It's a game of luck. I wouldn't completely say that's why England have not gone further to, of course, winning major trophies as a nation. And of course, I would liken England to be like the Super Eagles. I mean, they've got lots of talent. My word, the talent right there is enormous, and they kind of lack a manager who can manage this talent and bring out the best from them. And that is why maybe one of the reasons why England have not won a major trophy in a very long time.
Meanwhile, let's look at the players that they've dropped and then compare them to the players they've kept. We all know the situation at right back. There's like 4 or 5 players in that position that could play very well, even with Ben White amongst them, having been converted into a right winger by Mikel Arteta at Arsenal. But he is not being picked. Southgate said he is behind Kieran Trippier, which is understandable this season. Kieran has been named as the right back, starting right back for the team of the season. Kyle Walker is still very much revered in the English national side, and even even if Reece James wasn't injured, there's a good chance he wouldn't get into the squad ahead of Alexander Arnold. So it says a lot about where the manager's head is at. But one player that seems to continually make it into the national side, regardless of the form he has been suffering in the last 2-3 seasons, Harry Maguire is back in the squad. What is going on here?
I can remember the last time we had a conversation on Plus Sports, and we took time out intensively to talk about Harry Maguire, and you told me, a friend of mine told me he was a fridge. But the England manager, Gareth Southgate, doesn't think he's a fridge. He thinks he's got quality. He might not have that ability to win games or to stop teams from scoring against his team, but when it comes to the leadership quality, every manager loves it. And maybe he's on the starting the squad for the English squad for the upcoming Euros qualifiers, but he might not get to start games. He might not just get to start games. I don't think he's in the squad. He's going to start games because England have got a very good back line, the likes of John Stones, who just scored a very vital goal in that Arsenal-Manchester City clash, is right there. Not forgetting the likes of Tyrone Mings, who plays for Aston Villa, who's been prolific so far for the Midlands. But once again, Harry Maguire shows up maybe because he was the most talked about player in 2019 where Manchester United signed him, and he was signed with lots of money, about 18 million, making him the most expensive English defender in history. And I think he still has that credibility of convincing people that he's a good leader on the pitch of play. And when it comes to his ball playing abilities, I'll give him an A1 for that particular one. When it comes to defending, your guess is as good as mine, Mikhail.
Well, he is still a big figure in the national side, a captain. He is considered by Gareth Southgate as clearly having something to offer the team, whether it's in leadership. I always favored the style of leadership to lead by example. When you're not getting on the pitch and you're not getting to play and you're not getting to lead the back line, how are you leading by example? Speeches are good, but we save those for presidential campaigns. Let's talk about Alexander-Arnold. The fact is, in recent games with Liverpool, Klopp has gone back to the experiment he tried last season, which was pushing him into midfield, trying to have him play a little bit more. It didn't work before. It didn't work with Gareth Southgate. However, it seemed to have been working recently. It certainly has limited a lot of the issues about his deficiencies in defense. Him being an orchestrator in midfield seems to be taking maximum use of his passing ability, his vision. Is Gareth Southgate going to follow suit here? Because Kieran Trippier has been picked, Kyle Walker has been picked. Already that's two right backs, and unless you're telling me one of those players is going to be moved into the centre back position, at any given time, he's going to have two right backs on the bench. What do you think, Alexander-Arnold in midfield?
Well, I think that having players with individual brilliance, having players who can stack up a game with some moments of brilliance is very important. And even though Trent Alexander-Arnold, we've majorly known him as a right back player, but this season, the start of this season, when Liverpool were struggling, and we've seen them, they're almost going to be finishing this season as fifth because of how bad they started the season. So Trent Alexander-Arnold was in the news. He was on the conversation for the very wrong reasons, that he could not defend as a real right back. But when it comes to attacking, when it comes to putting in the right ball, everyone gave him A1. Maybe that's why at the end of the season, Jurgen Klopp opted to just oblige and say, hey, Trent, you're good with the passing. You have a great get ball when it comes to crossing and giving passes. Okay, why not go to the midfield and show what you know how to do right there? And so far, he did greatly in the last few games where he played as a midfielder. He even scored free kicks. And this is what will help any team. If you have a free kick specialist, gone are the days of the likes of David Beckham, and one of the best free kick takers for England right now, even in the world. James Ward-Prowse has not been called upon. So Trent Alexander-Arnold might just be that player that Gareth Southgate will just oblige to put him in the midfield as well to once again show his quality. If Gareth Southgate does that, I think that's going to be the turning point for the English national team. I'm talking in terms of the Euros. I'm not sure going further, because Trent Alexander-Arnold has time and time again shown his quality that he's not a good left back. He's not a good right back. I beg your pardon. When it comes to going forward, I'm not saying he cannot play fullback, but when it comes to a right back position, what the definition of a right back, which is assisting the defenders, assisting the 5 and 6, and also maybe I think traditional right backs are not even supposed to go forward. But football has changed. Modern football, we get to see right backs crossing.
I remember under Jose Mourinho's first management of Chelsea, his first iteration of the squad, the right backs never went beyond the halfway line. given the
That's what I'm saying.
qualities of Alexander Arnold, I do not believe he's the kind of right back that would have stayed in the squad or even in the team for Jose Mourinho. He might have left the club very early.
Of course, because Jose Mourinho is very traditional.
Hmm.
Even in 2023, Jose
Hmm.
Mourinho still remains
I
very,
mean,
very traditional, and I don't
tradition
think
or
it's
not,
ever gonna
he has
it's ever
gotten
gonna change.
Roma to another European final. And to be honest, I predicted this at the beginning of the season. I felt we were looking at Jose Mourinho rebuilding a team in the image of Porto in 2002, 2003, the team that made it all the way to Europe the first season under Jose, and the Champions League final in Europe again the next season. And if he commits to it, I see no reason why, if they win the trophy this season, he couldn't get them into the Champions League final next season, because he seems to be just capable of using those
Progressing.
traditional values, those traditional structures, despite all the improvements in the game, despite all of this going on in the game, despite all of the Pep Guardiola, De Zerbi innovations, improving the tactical understanding of the game. Jose Mourinho plays by the numbers and he keeps getting results.
Well, Jose Mourinho, we can talk about him time and time again. He has proven to be a manager of results. He might not be very fancy, he might not be very entertaining, but when it comes to grinding out results, which is the most important part of the game, but great work he's doing with Roma, and if he beats Sevilla in the final, he's going to qualify automatically to the UEFA Champions League, because right now they're not in a very good position
Yeah.
in the Serie A. But it's a very unlucky one for Jose Mourinho. They're taking on Sevilla, who I think they have the Europa League in their DNA. It's going to be a great, great game. I can't wait for that particular one in Budapest. It's all to look out for.
I'm
But Jose
almost
Mourinho will
more
give him kudos.
I'm
Always
almost
remember
more
him as far as football
excited. I'm almost more
goes.
excited about that game than the Man City Inter Milan game in the Champions League final. But anyway, we were talking about international football. We digressed a bit. So they are playing this squad has been picked for the next round of international games. Another player that has made it into the national side, and I think in the last couple of years has finally rediscovered his abilities, his scoring abilities. Injury plagued him for a little while. Callum Wilson, he is back, and he's going to be a capable deputy for Harry Kane, right?
Capable deputy.
I mean,
Yeah, we can give him that
plenty
because
of
of the
pace,
goals this
plenty of
so
pace,
far.
plenty of
17,
power, plenty of ability in front of the goal to be clinical. He cannot obviously walk into any team and bench Harry Kane. The only player in league football right now as a striker who could probably bench Harry Kane is Erling Haaland, and those are by the numbers. Not necessarily everything else a striker is expected to bring it into the way a team plays these days. But Callum Wilson, in the last couple of years, has realized more and more of the potential that was expected of him years ago back in Bournemouth, right?
I can remember his days at the Vitality Stadium. He was a great player, still a great player. He was one of the favorites to be picked out of that club when Bournemouth went injured. Bournemouth actually went on relegation, I think, about it. So the man Callum Wilson, 17 goals so far in the season, and he's still banging in the goals. Newcastle through to the UEFA Champions League sport for the very first time since 2003. All credits to his goals, but I think if Harry Kane gets injured in that Three Lions squad, I think no one can take his position. No one can do what Harry Kane does. So right
Well,
now as things stand, because when you see the way that the Three Lions play, they play to suit Harry Kane. And you talked about power. He doesn't have the kind of power Harry Kane has. Harry Kane is one of the finest shooters in world football, if not the best if not the best. I don't see anyone who shoots the ball better than Harry Kane. Harry Kane in the 6 yard box, in the 18 yard box, even outside the box, he is
I know
devastatingly
one
very
player. I
good.
know one
Callum
player.
Wilson cannot
Some
sit in that position.
I know one player. Some people might say he's
Tell
too
me.
old, but Cristiano Ronaldo is still the best shooter of the ball. His power is still legendary to goalkeepers. Still sends shivers down their spine.
Okay.
But speaking
No, it
on
doesn't.
to
It
speaking
doesn't.
about
It clearly shows. Like, okay.
no, go on, wrap up.
It clearly shows that in the Ronaldo Messi conversation, it clearly shows where you stand, Michael. I
Well,
don't think he still has that
I
power
am an
anymore.
unbiased journalist, unlike those who vote for the Ballon d'Or. However, I will say this: um, in the last 2 seasons, Ronaldo's shooting ability has the technique he uses to shoot the penalty and to shoot his free kicks have changed slightly, and nobody even noticed. I only recently just noticed, but we'll talk more on that later. Meanwhile, in regards to your point about how the Three Lions play to suit Harry Kane, the fact is you may be very well right. Marcus Rashford's output this season has been exemplary. However, in the last couple of months, it has it seems to have gone down. His output has gone down. His form has tapered off. It seems like he has reached his peak for the season. I wonder now, going into the international break, if he has anything left to give. Because when players pile up games because it seems like they're in form and you have to take advantage of this form, they can come back so tired, so exhausted that next season we might get the Marcus Rashford of last season again.
Hopefully, I mean, we love to see players continue in the standards they've set for themselves. And Marcus Rashford this season was phenomenal, especially after the World Cup, banging in goals left, right, center. And we know why he got off a little bit because of the little knocks he had, and we don't expect players to come back in the form where they left, especially from a very major injury. But we saw a couple of injuries on Marcus Rashford at the peak of the season where he was doing greatly. And Gareth Southgate, I'm very sure, understands his quality, and that's why he didn't waste any time to pick him. But I don't see him as a starter, just like we saw it at the World Cup. Marcus Rashford did not start a game for England. I think exception for the third group game where England already qualified, and they were like, okay, Marcus Rashford, come in, start the game. Harry Kane is always going to be the number one striker. And when it comes to national football, you hardly see coaches play a two strike force. You hardly see coaches play a partnership in front. They're always going one striker and maybe wingers, so that the wingers can create for the striker. And when you play that kind of formation, that striker has to be good with the head, has to be good with on his feet as well, and that is what Harry Kane brings to the table, and that's why he's gonna start ahead of Marcus Rashford against ahead of Callum Wilson anytime, any day.
All right.